Decimal numbers typically refer to numbers with digits to the right of the decimal point, which we can see right here. Now, technically, decimal numbers is our number system. Decimal numbers will typically refer to numbers that actually do have these smaller numbers, which are parts of whole numbers. That's why it's used in this context. So we still have the same place values, the ones, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions, and so on to the left. But as we go to the right, we have tenths, then hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, then 100,000ths, then millions. And you can see that in these places, we have the THS. That's designating the fact that it's smaller than one. It's a part of a whole. It's the decimal portion versus the larger values like the ones, thousands, millions, billions. So we're going to look at these four numbers here. We'll place them in the chart above, and we're going to ask what place value does the digit 4 occupy. So this number here, we can start with a decimal point. That will tell us that we're going to have 1 and 7. And then as we go to the left, we're going to have 1, 3, 2, 4, 2, 3. So the digit 4 here in this case, right, it's going to occupy the 1000s or the thousands slot. So that's like a normal place value that we've already been looking at. But let's look at this next one. We have 256, 134. And here we can see that the 4 is taking up the thousandths slot with a THS on the end. All right, for the next one, we have 0.04. The decimal point still goes in the decimal point slot, 0.04. So you can see that the 4 in this case is taking up the hundredths slot. Again, the THS designates that it's a smaller than 1, a part of a whole. And then finally, we have 1.4671. And the 4 in this space is going to be the tenths slot. So again, all of these, we just line the decimal point up right here. And then as you go to the left, you get larger and larger numbers. As you go to the right, we have smaller and smaller ones. Now, we don't actually have to write numbers like this, 0.04. You could write it as 0.04, but I will always write it as 0.04 because I think the 0, if there is no whole part to it, ones, tens, hundreds, or any of those place values in the number, the 0 just kind of shows you exactly where the decimal point is. Okay, these numbers, right, we can read them off as 324,231 and 17 hundredths, because the last digit here, the number 17, right, is red, 17, but then the 7 is in the hundredths column. It's the second column past the decimal. So we're going to say 17 hundredths. That's how we read that number. Note that the word and is referring to the decimal point, and it's used nowhere else when you read a number. So this one, 1.4671, you're going to read that as 1 and 4,671 ten thousandths, because this is going to be the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and 10,000ths slot. So that's how you can read those numbers. I think in practice, though, most people will just read it as like 1.4671. All right, decimal numbers, because of their nature, some decimal numbers will continue indefinitely. See numbers like pi or e. Because of that, we really do want to round when we work with decimal numbers. Not every decimal number needs to be rounded, but a lot of them will want to be rounded because of they're going to continue on to many places, and it's just too unwieldy like that. So rounding is very valid. It still works the same way that we've already talked about. We're going to find the place value that we're looking at. That's going to be the rounding digit. Look at the test digit just to the right of it, and then go from there. So We're going to round these decimal numbers to the given place value. We want the tenths here. The tenths is the first space after the decimal point, which is going to be right here on the 3. So this is our rounding digit. We're going to look at the 4 and ask, is this 5 or greater? No, it's not. So we're not going to round that up. So it's just going to be 42.3. And when you're rounding with decimal numbers, you're going to drop the remaining digits. You're not going to replace them with zeros like we did when you're rounding with whole numbers. We're just going to drop the rest of the places and ignore them. Okay, we can also, instead of saying like tenths or hundredths or thousandths, we can also say 2 places, and that typically means 2 places past the decimal. So in this case, we're going to round to this value because there's going to be 1 at the 3 and 2 at the 9. That's 2 places past the decimal. This is the same thing as rounding to the hundredths. So this is 9. We're going to look at the test digit, which is going to be 9 here. That is 5 or greater, so we're going to add 1. That's going to result in this one also being added to 1. So we're going to have 42.40. We want 2 places past the decimal, so we have 2 places past the decimal. So I'm going to leave that 0 there, but the rest of the numbers I'm going to ignore. The rest of the zeros that would be there, because we always want to have the place value that's being rounded to. So the hundredths needs to be shown. Okay, for this one, we went with the thousandths. That's going to be tens, hundreds, thousandths. And we're going to look at the 6. That's our testing digit. That is 5 or greater, so we're going to add 1 to there. So we're going to get 42.346. We have the thousandth spot still there, so this is rounded correctly. All right. We want to round to the 100. Well, 100 is right. This is ones, tens, 100 is right there. So our testing digit is going to be 5. We're going to round that up. So this one's going to be rounded to 200, and nothing else is written. We still have to write these two zeros here, even though they're not part of the space. But that's because we're talking about 200 and not just 2 or 20. But the rest of the decimal spots we can just drop. They're not going to be needed in the rounded number. Okay, this now we want to round it to the hundredth. Hundredth is going to be tenths. Hundredth is going to be the 4. So the testing digit is 7. That is 5 or greater, so we're going to round that number up. 156.25. We have the hundredth spot right there, and so we're good to go. This one's also going to be rounded to the hundredths. That's going to be right here. Our testing digit is 9. Once again, we're going to round that up. That's going to cascade to this one as well. So we're going to get 23.50. That's the hundredth spot, so it needs to be in our answer. Okay, we're going to round this 1 to 3 places. So we have 1, 2, 3. The 5 is our testing digit. That's going to get rounded up then. So 404, since the 3 gets added 1. We have 3 places past our decimal, so we've done that correctly. And then the nearest whole number means there should be no decimal part. In other words, round to the 1s spot. This one, the testing digit becomes 5. This is 5 or greater, so we're going to add 1 to the 1 spot, and that gives us 22. And there's no decimal point, no decimal part in this rounded number.